and indirectly to continuously improve the lives of our members and workers in South Africa. Uasa is also proud that it has succeeded in growing its membership the last year amidst all of the external challenges. The esteemed guests, those that have joined virtually and physically here at the venue, colleagues and friends, I welcome you to the 21st Uasa South African Employment Report. My name is Jacques Hugo and I'm the CEO of Uasa. Specific welcome to our esteemed National Executive Committee members that are here in attendance today, and is ably led by our President that I would welcome to the podium in a few minutes' time to introduce the Uasa South African Labour Report and an exciting new approach that we're going to be launching today. Let me at this juncture also convey the best wishes of our producer GS, Ms. Rifta Ajam, that wanted to attend here physically today, but has joined us virtually on the platform. So how did we get here? Way back when in 2004, based on a need to do some research and track variations pertinent and relevant to employment-related topics annually, Uasa, in collaboration with the now renowned economist Mike Schuessler, launched and published its very first Uasa South African Employment Report. Over the years, we've tackled topics such as employment earnings, taxes, benefits, with the international comparison in 2004, skill shortage, urban legend or fact. I can still remember Mike saying that. In 2011, and unemployment, the cause of all South Africans' problems in a post-COVID world, and how do we increase employment in 2021 at our National Congress in October of that year. Over the years, the innovative report remained highly relevant and has been welcomed by many as a trusted and reliable publication. In 2015, we were joined by Mr. Francois Groepe, the then Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank, as a guest speaker at the launch of the 14th Uasa Employment Report. And he said, this publication has grown in stature over the years, and it's earned itself a place amongst the various high-level publications informing on the state of the South African labour market. We today pay tribute to Mike, who carried out the research and presented the report findings annually. Mike was part of our Uasa family, and his unique personality, charm and diligence is sorely missed. However, with change comes new opportunities and the opportunity of new paradigms. Join me in welcoming our President, Ms. Patience Mpitsi, to the podium to set the scene and introduce the keynote speaker of the day. I thank you, President.
Good day, everyone. My name is Patience Mpitsi, and I am the President of Uasa, the union. My task today is very short, in brief. What I can say to you, ladies and gentlemen, this morning, when I welcome you, I would like to welcome the Uasa NEC and our guests this afternoon into this a privileged moment that we are having as Uasa the Union. Onward and forward, as we continue to explore solutions for unemployment, economic growth, challenges and the many challenges that plague our members and workers in South Africa, we are proud to announce a groundbreaking partnership between Uasa the Union and the Bureau of Market Research, redefining the way workers use big data in creating the future we want. During the Uasa Congress in 2021, our theme was creating the future we want. We want to be solution-driven instead of being part of the challenges in the world of work. In our endeavor to actively seek these solutions for the future, we realize that if we keep on doing the same things, we could not expect a different outcome. One of the solutions was to collaborate with the BMR. The Bureau of Market Research operates as an independent market research entity within the University of South Africa corporate group structure. As a highly reputable entity, the sustainable business of the BMR is deeply rooted in ethical, scientific, intelligent, innovative, highly quality, accurate, reliable, unbiased, and inclusive market research practices that are collectively applied in a practical and strategic style to generate custom-made, one-stop modern market research intelligence optimally impacting on business and societal transformation. Uasa, as a trend-setting trade union that is committed to carry out its vision to be recognized and reputable organization, serving with excellence, integrity, with a development and sustainable focus, being devoted to serving and protecting members
Load shedding.
Load shedding, I'm not afraid of you, I'm coming. With a developmental and sustainable focus, being devoted to serving and protecting members by progressively adapting to changes in the world of work, is a privilege and collaborate with the BMR. In unpacking the next paradigm, not only will Professor Karel van Aert, Research Director of the BMR, present the research results of the 21st Uasa South African Employment Report, but also present detail on the newly formulated Uasa/BMR Employment Growth Index. This unique index, initiated by Uasa, is a South African first, will be updated quarterly, and will consist of 5 sub-indices, namely employment growth as a labor demand indicator, production elasticity of employment as an indicator of the strength of the relationship between GDP growth and employment creation, growth in unemployment, expanded definition as an indicator of the growth in the number of economically active people who are jobless. The quality of labor supply as a proxy by highest educational status to provide an indication of growth in the value of human capital locked in the economic active population. The last one, it will be the compensation growth as an indicator of employment-related income growth. An index of this nature will greatly assist, for an example, policymakers, unions, employers, marketers, and economists to determine what aspects need to be addressed to optimize job creation, to strengthen GDP employment leakage, to address the unemployment, to improve the quality of labor supply, and thereby strengthening the labor demand and supply nexus, and the optimized to compensation growth in South Africa. It is my privilege to welcome on this podium our Professor Karel van Aert, the Research Director and the Head of Market Intelligence Search Unit and BMR, to the podium to present the research results and introduce the Uasa and the BMR Employment Index 2023. You are welcome to the podium.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really a huge pleasure to be here today, and just being here takes me back so many years because I originally worked at the old National Manpower Commission, and I worked in it for NETLAC, and we had a discussion beforehand, and it seems that I know a lot of people that you also know, and I also work for the Chamber of Mines, so also in the labour sphere, so it's really great being here today. I just want to introduce the other members of the BMR team here today. Professor Dion Tustin, he's the CEO of the Bureau of Market Research, and Jacqueline Meyeren, she's the head of our Household Wealth Research Division. So, and they've done also excellent work, and thank you so much for that on this project. When Job introduced today's session, he referred to Mike Schisler, and as we've also come a very long way with Mike, and Mike was really a character, and I'd like to continue in the same vein as Mike, in the sense that he was really controversial, but I think he was really controversial in unpacking quite a lot of the facts, and that's exactly what I want to do today, is to look at this issue with respect to employment, job creation, etc., from a little bit of a different perspective, and that's also where the term of a new paradigm comes in. Also, as part of what I'll be presenting today, is that I'm going to start with a little bit of an introduction, just to set the scene of the various employment aspects. When you have a look at what's happening at the moment with respect to the South African economy, and you make a list of the various things that's actually pulling the economy down, that list becomes longer and longer and longer. I remember last year that we made a list of the most serious issues, and it was about 20 to 30 issues. Currently, it's more than 50. And it seems that those number of issues are growing on a continuous basis. And the result of that is that it locks the economy in a low growth path. And it's impacting on all of us in the sense that there's lower income growth. And you've also seen, for example, that there's also less jobs being created. One of the major problems that low growth also creates over a period of time is that it does not encourage people to employ more people. And that's really problematic, especially when your employers have got a very low level of business confidence, not believing that it'll really be doing well the economy. And another price that you then eventually pay because of the fact that not a lot of jobs are being created is that your unemployment rate, your levels of inequality, your levels of poverty keeps on increasing. And what I'm going to be showing you today is that nobody knows how many people are poor or the percentage of poverty in South Africa. Nobody knows how many people are employed. Nobody knows how many people are unemployed. There are the official statistics. However, when you look, for example, at a lot of market research surveys where they don't ask people complex questions to determine whether they are employed or unemployed, you see, for example, that your employment levels are substantially lower than your official statistics, while the unemployment rates are substantially higher. This was at the introduction. Then let's have just a little bit of a look at the economic and employment trends. And this is on a slide called Real GDP Growth. When you look at the real GDP growth in South Africa, you will notice that when you start in 2008, and I'm starting in 2008 because we had a recession in 2008. It really wasn't a good time. That was the time that they had the subprime crisis in the US that impacted on the country as a whole. And what you find, for example, there, thank you so much. And what you find, for example, is that we would have expected that we would have grown out of the subprime crisis, and that the economy would have picked up speed. However, what we found is a trajectory like you're seeing at the moment, because this was 2008 recessionary conditions. It picked up a little bit, and then look at this pattern over time. And this is clearly indicative of how the economy has. This was COVID, it picked up again, and once again down. So what you're seeing there is that your GDP growth pattern is locked in a low pattern. And as your number of downside risks keep on increasing, it's locking the economy into that lower pattern over time. When you look at the expectations for 2023, and this is from the Economist of the Year competition that the Bureau of Market Research is also hosting, where we've got nearly 40 of South Africa's top economists doing forecasts on a monthly basis. You will notice here that when you look at the expectations with respect to GDP, it's only about 0.4% growth for this year. But it's expected to be substantially lower than that, because what we've just seen with respect to the reaction of the world to the Russian ship, for example, the expectations that load shedding could go up to level 8, that most probably that is a very positive expectation for the year. Consumer price inflation, we're expecting it over the longer term to go down. However, it's still locked into high levels of inflation. The high prime interest rate is hurting a lot of consumers with credit. And I think quite a lot of the people that you are represented are also in the situation that the money that they've got is being squeezed out because of this. There's another problem that's to a large extent unaddressed with respect to the interest rate in South Africa. You've got in South Africa a very interesting situation. There are just 4 central banks in the world that are not nationalized, which is not part of the various governments. The reason why you need it is because of the fact that you need to ensure that your fiscal policy and your monetary policy talk to one another. Because what we've seen in that picture that I've shown you of low growth is that you've got a situation of the fiscus kickstarting the economy, it picks up, the Reserve Bank comes in, pulls off the economy, pulls it down, the fiscus kickstarted again, etc. So you're going to see that wavy pattern over time, and that's problematic. And the way that Jock would remember as well, many years ago, as I said, quite a few years ago, the Rian Kruiwagen was still the MC of that session. We had a chat about the way that the United States deal with it. They deal with it in completely a different way. And the way that they deal, they're not just focusing with respect to managing inflation, but they're trying to strike a balance between inflation and economic growth. So that would then mean that there's quite a lot of times that you've got high inflation, but then your growth imperatives are more important, etc. And that's also one of the things that you see here, for example, causing that situation that a lot of people cannot spend because of lower money. Also, here's that you see that your the value of the rand, and we've seen the past few weeks and especially past few days what has happened in that regard. And then also your average real annual household expenditure growth of about 1.3% low. So that would then also mean that quite a lot of people are not obtaining sufficient money for everything that they need. So a fairly dismal situation with respect to the economy at present. Sorry, I'm struggling with technology. Just move on. Aha. So, moving back. When you have a look at what is also happening on the employment scene, you would notice that it's not just a case of the economy not giving rise to sufficient job creation. There's also certain occupations where there's substantial growth, while, for example, with other occupations, growth is low. When you look at this picture here, you'll notice here that when you look at your managers, the percentage contribution of that grew substantially during that period of 2008 to 2023. The implication of that is that the demand in the labour market is growing more towards more skilled people. While, for example, when you look at the skills structure of the labour market, it's to a very large extent still that there's a big bulk of people with lower skills. Also here, when you look at sales and service people in the retail sector, in the wholesale sectors, that there has been growth in that regard. And also, when you look here at the brown one, the professional people has also grown, with also a little bit of growth there in the elementary occupations. But that's more people that, for example, is on the fringe of the labour market, the so-called contractual fringe. There's also, during this time, sorry, once again, technology, well, thanks. During this time, there's also been quite a lot of jobs where the demand has gone down substantially. And if you look, for example, at your technicians, the blue line there, you will notice that the demand for technicians has gone down. Your domestic worker has also gone down, and I'm expecting, especially with the new legislation, bringing the Occupational Health Safety Act also into that domain, that you might find, for example, that the demand for that will also go down. And also here is that the percentage of clerks has also gone down. So what we see here is that when you look at the more skilled occupations, that the demand has increased. When you look, for example, at the more unskilled occupation, the demand has decreased. But then you're also going to see a fascinating pattern that I'll show you the data from. And that pattern is that a lot of the positions for the clerks, the craft and related trade people, etc., are not being fulfilled by school leavers with a matric, but by graduates. And the reason for that is that, to a very large extent, the skills that the school leavers have got are not sufficient to clear the labour market. So then you've got an extra pool of people who are graduates that's being absorbed into those type of occupations. This is a little bit of a messy picture. But what this shows you is what has been happening with unemployment in South Africa. And this is the official unemployment rate. Sorry, the official one, but the expanded one. So that would then mean that it's the people that's being declared unemployed, but also include the so-called discouraged work seekers. And the discouraged work seekers are people that haven't been actively looking for jobs. Here comes the first issue that I've indicated to you right in the beginning, that your unemployment and employment figures are questionable. When you look at the newest MAP survey, that's your media and product survey, it appears here that your percentage of people that describe themselves as being unemployed is about 54% in South Africa. While, for example, when you look at the expanded definition, and the expanded definition is that one that's indicated there, you're looking at about 44%. So there's a disparity between the two. When you start looking at why the disparity, in terms of Statistics South Africa, that when they define an employed person, the person that's employed in the informal sector of the economy is also viewed as employed. However, a lot of research that the Bureau has also done have shown that a lot of those people are survivalists. They are not employed, they're just waiting for an employment, and while they are waiting for employment, they are doing something to survive, etc. Okay? So this is a real crisis in the sense that when you look at your level of employment, that of unemployment that increased dramatically. Even the Western Cape, that's often mentioned as a good example of a province that's well managed. Even there, for example, you see that your unemployment rate is creeping up. Now the problem. It was indicated by the President right in the beginning, that if we keep on doing things in the same way, we can't expect different outcomes, okay? If we keep it, what the economists call ceteris paribus, that all things being equal, you're going to find that this pattern that you see there is going to go like this over time. There's nothing, and that's also why we're looking at the possibility of a new paradigm to actually change this picture that you see in front of you. So let's just look, except for the trends, at some of the patterns from the quarterly labour force survey. This is the first weakness of what I'm presenting because 2 days ago, the new quarterly labour force survey was published, but Jacqueline and myself had a lot of analysis on that, also to inform you, and I think the patterns are to a very large extent the same. This for me is a growing crisis slide. What you see in here is that when you start breaking down the size of the working age population, the size of the economically active population, and your labour force participation rate in terms of schooling, a fascinating picture starts to emerge. Namely, firstly, is that when you look at where the bulk of the working age population is, you'll notice that the skills levels are there from grade 0, grade 8 to 11, and grade 12. But as we've seen from those previous slides where they show the growing of occupations, this is not where the demand is. So there's the demand in the economy, in the labour market, is out of sync with the supply. So you've got a complete oversupply of lower skilled labour. But now comes another problem that you often don't see from this. There's something called the TIMS, which is an international maths test. And when you look, and that is also then applied to that specific group, the grade 8 to 12 group. When you look at this specific maths test that's been taken from people that's typically in our grade 10 or grade 11, and it's not supposed to be the grade 10 to 11s, that was a decision by government, but it's actually, it's supposed to be the grade 8 and 9s that's supposed to write it. So these are people that's actually older than the people that's supposed to write it. The international score of this is about 850 out of 1,000 on this specific scoring instrument. Just keep that in mind, 850 out of 1,000. In sub-Saharan Africa, it's about 700. In South Africa, it's 370. So that shows you it's not just a case of people being lower skilled, it's also a case of the skills that they do have don't clear the labour market. And we especially see here that looking at the people with a grade 12 qualification, we've seen that the pass rates have increased, but the real quality hasn't increased in a specific group. Also here is just that when you look at the absorption rate of these people and also the employment rate, you find a very interesting pattern. Namely, when you look at your level of, at your people with a degree and postgraduate, your employment rate is about 88%, which is actually higher than a lot of developed countries. So it shows you that the absorption of the graduates in South Africa is very, very high. When you look at people with a grade 12, those school leavers, your employment rate is about 58%, your employed as a percentage of your working age population is just 42.8%. So it's a very clear indication that that specific group is not clearing the labour market. So what happened is that the Development Policy Research Unit at the University of Cape Town, they had a look at why is this happening. So they went to speak to a lot of employers. And they asked the employers, why aren't you appointing people with a matric? And what came out is that they said that the people had some academic skills, but they didn't have practical skills, they didn't have occupational skills, they didn't have an understanding of basic finances, etc. That also came out there. They didn't have work skills that they can apply as a clerk, etc. So the criticism was that the school system should be much more geared towards occupational skills, financial skills, entrepreneurial skills, etc. Just to give you an interesting example of what is possible. Pretoria Boys High, fascinating school. For a while, I've just forgotten his surname, there was a very interesting principal of that school. He was there for a lot of years. When his new learners came into the schools in grade 8, he told them that except for the normal curriculum, I want you to make a choice in your life. The choice is whether you want to be a slave or a master. If you tell me I want to be employed one day, you say I want to be a slave. If you, for example, say that you want to become an entrepreneur, you choose to be a master. And so he actively, except for the normal school curriculum, taught people an entrepreneurial mindset, etc. And some of the children coming from Pretoria Boys High there are very well known. One of his the people that he was a mentor for is Elon Musk, that was at that same stage there. University of Cape Town also found that a very high percentage of CEOs of companies in South Africa comes from that specific group. So it just shows you in one school, while, for example, by changing the way that you teach people to be more entrepreneurial, what could be achieved in that regard. Sorry, once again. Sorry. There we go. When you look at various occupations in South Africa by highest degree, you find, for example, as you would have expected, with people with a bachelor's degree, with a bachelor's degree and a postgraduate diploma, honors degree, master's, that a very high percentage of them would be your legislators, senior officials and managers. That was as expected. Also professionals, as expected. Also here the technical and associate professionals, as expected. But then we're in for a surprise. In the sense that when you look at those blocks there, that's much more your technical and your elementary workers, that there's a fairly high percentage among them. And this is what has been found, as I've indicated, by the University of Cape Town, University of Stellenbosch, by their research program, that a lot of those people are employers that looked for people to do basic jobs. They found that the skills of the matriculants were wanting, and they basically employed those people in those specific jobs. When you look for people with a certificate with grade 12 here, you will notice there that there's also quite a lot of legislators, senior officials and managers in that specific group. And what you find here is that it's a little bit of an anomaly, because you would have expected that those people all would be more highly skilled. So the University of Cape Town also asked companies, why are you appointing those people? And what came out, that they were appointed because of their own personal unique abilities. And those personal and unique abilities are threefold. And this is a very important in looking at the new paradigm for South Africa. It was firstly thinking skills. They said that these were people that's on their own accord highly intelligent, that can do a lot of planning. They are very good at designing strategies. They are very good decision thinkers, etc. And they also said that in a new school curriculum, this is exactly what you want, thinking skills to be developed. Secondly, entrepreneurial. These are people that made the decisions that they're going to, instead of becoming employed to start their own businesses, and they were very effective in doing that. Thirdly, is to have labor market related skills. So that would, for example, be a person that even who have not necessarily finished school, but they've taught themselves IT, they've taught themselves basic accounting, they've taught themselves basic marketing, selling, etc. And so they were doing very well because of that. So this is just a pointer of where the school curriculum should be going. And now for the big reveal based on what I've just indicated to you this morning. So what I'm just going to try to show you now is that how the employment index are then tracking these various aspects that I've been highlighting in order to say that let's look at a solution. Firstly is that when you look at the first part of the index, you will notice here that the index, as the President indicated, consists of 5 sub-employment indices. And these 5 indices provide you an analytical tool in the sense that we can track what is happening on the employment scene over time. So let's just have a look at what those are. Firstly, you have to track employment growth over time. So what you're trying to determine, what is happening with respect to employment? Is employment picking up? Is it going down? Or is it incredibly volatile? What is happening there? If you see, for example, that employment keeps on increasing, you know that we are successful in absorbing new entrants into the labour market. I know that Mike Schuster, also a lot of his presentations indicated that a lot of the matriculants, his estimate was nearly 60% of them won't be absorbed into the labour market because the jobs for them are simply not there. Secondly, quite a mouthful, very complex, the production elasticity of employment. That's the relationship between GDP growth and employment. Remember why this is so important. The National Development Plan is premised upon the fact that the two are elastic. Because remember it says that we need at least 5% growth per annum in order to ensure that the unemployed become absorbed into employment. But what will happen if that elasticity is simply not there? So that would mean we can get 10% growth per year and they won't be absorbed. So that's the one thing that we're going to have a look there. Then looking at growth in employment, how successful are we in absorbing the unemployed? Then we look at the quality of the labour supply, the skills that they've got, and finally, what's very important for you as well, is compensation growth. So let's just have a look at those 5 C in the employment index, how things have been going. The first one there is looking at employment growth. 2008, recessionary conditions. After the recession, it was supposed that with high levels of economic growth, which we started having, that we would have had a pattern of employment growth. But a lot of employers say, whoa, there were bad times. I'm scared of appointing new people. So what a lot of them did is that they first started investing in capital goods, like for example, more technology, before they started employing more people. And that went on for quite a while. And there was some growth there until COVID struck. And you will notice that this pattern now is incredibly volatile. Also here is that although during the last quarter there was about 140,000 new jobs being created, the number of unemployed grew with double that. So, and that's simply not sufficient jobs being created. Yeah.
My apology. Ladies and gentlemen, the people that are joined virtually cannot hear us. Would you mind if we just pause for 5 minutes? That's not your business. During load shedding, I think something went wrong. And if you could just allow us 5 minutes, because I think it's important for the people that have joined virtually to be able to hear. So, ladies and gentlemen, my apologies for that. Christian, always plan us
That's good to take a break.
I don't smoke, but I'm gonna try.
As jy begin droog word, dan kan jy ja, gaan terug. Terug sit ons kyk net gou vir 'n boodskap op die chat.
Yeah, I took a short break. Yeah.
Welkom terug.
Is nog nie? Ah. Christina, kom nie.
Yes.
Perfect, I know. Right, so ladies and gentlemen, what has happened is during load shedding, a link was missed and the people can see us but they can't hear us. But we are recording and we're going to be handling the Q&A from the virtual people on it later on. So they can see us but they can't hear us. It's like this, sometimes the lights are on, sometimes. Prof. Karel, thank you.
Thank you so very much. What we were focusing on is that we were focusing on your production and assisted employment, as I've indicated, that not moving. So the production and assisted employment is that relationship between economic growth and employment growth. I've just indicated that that is very important because your national development plan also assumes a relationship between those two, that if it's not there, that could be highly problematic because then we are possibly chasing the wrong thing. So when you look at the production of statistic employment in South Africa, it looks like this. And you'll see that it's incredibly volatile. So sometimes there is a relationship between economic growth and employment growth. Other times you'll notice that there isn't a relationship. Another question could be, why is this happening? And what is happening here is an indication that it's not just your GDP growth rate that drives employment. There's a lot of other factors as well. And what you will notice that's very interesting in South Africa is that we are experiencing continuous episodes of optimism and pessimism, in the sense that there's good news coming into the economy, possibly a little bit less load shedding, and we've also seen, for example, there that there's a lot of new initiatives to get the economy growing. 2 days later, there's an announcement, possibly by a politician, that is not being absorbed very favorably into the market, and what's the result? It comes down. So what happens with employers is that they are then caught between the good messages and the bad things on a continuous basis. And a lot of them are discouraged then from employing more people on a continuous basis. And you can clearly see it from this pattern here. And the big question is that what should be done to ensure that the elasticity becomes much stronger than it is? And the answer in that regard is you have to start ignoring the relationship between GDP growth and employment growth, and you should start focusing on the real underlying drivers of employment creation. And a lot of these drivers is, for example, that a lot of businesses indicate that I want a more business-friendly environment, that more people should become entrepreneurial and start businesses, etc. There's a lot of other drivers than what is involved in this equation, etc. And the new paradigm that I'm going to indicate to you is exactly focused on that. When you then also have a look here at the ability of the economy to absorb the unemployed. If you take 2008 as being 100, and this is based on hard statistics, namely the quarterly labor force statistics, you will notice in this regard that if the ability of the economy to absorb the unemployed was 100 in 2008, the ability now to absorb the unemployed is about 13%. And with the new quarterly labor force survey, that it's even lower. So the result of this is that the economy is not succeeding in increasing the level of unemployment. There is two major ways, for example, in which you can address this situation of more people becoming unemployed. The first way is that change the definition of unemployment. So that would then mean is that if you can change the definition, then it becomes more easy to contain the number of unemployed. Currently, from the definition is that if you have been unemployed for a certain period and you were not actively looking for a job during the time that the interview was conducted, you are not being seen as unemployed, you are being seen as economically not active, etc. While, for example, in a lot of other surveys, like for example MAPS that I've indicated, there the definitional issue is not relevant in the sense that they just ask people, do you see yourself as being unemployed? And then if you, for example, look at that, then that percentage there is about 4%. So the ability is actually much lower if you define, for example, unemployment correctly. But I'm coming to the good news. if you look, for example, at the quality of your skills pool in South Africa, the quality of the skills pool is being driven at the moment by schooling. And what we're seeing is a unique position compared to the rest of the world. More people are obtaining a matric qualification. More people are in schools, etc. Very good. This, however, does not give you an indication of the quality of the schooling, etc. But the positive news is that more people are finishing their education, and the emphasis here would, for example, be on ensuring that more people should also then become able to have the right skills. When you look at compensation, which is also a very important issue for you, you will notice here that from 2008, the compensation that was provided went up quite substantially from 2008 up to about 2019. But COVID changed a lot of things in South Africa. About 2 million jobs were lost during that first quarter of the hard lockdown. And a lot of the jobs that were created after that were jobs in the informal economy. Some elementary workers, it's not the same type of jobs that were lost during that period. And you can clearly see it from these figures, in the sense that even with a lot of the jobs coming back, you'll notice that the compensation growth is on the decline. And you can see it, for example, just looking at the government sector at the moment, where if you look at the wage increases that were provided in the sector during the past few years, it's not the same as was provided from 2010 to 2019. And this is also a good reason for that. And just bringing the whole index together, this is when you have a look at the index as a whole. It's very clear that from 2008, although there was low levels of economic growth, and although the employment was suboptimal, there was some improvements in your employment. It started to stagnate here for already quite a few years. About in 2017, COVID had a major impact on that. And what you see at the moment is that the situation of employment in total in South Africa is really, really problematic. And now while I'm mentioning the good news, some economists worldwide have been focusing on, but why? Why is this situation happening? And what a lot of economists have indicated that South Africa is not unique. That when you look at a lot of your Southeast Asian countries, like Vietnam, like, for example, Indonesia, like also Hong Kong, etc., had exactly the same pattern over a long period of time. But there's one difference. Where ours became worse after 2017, a lot of them improved dramatically. And the big question was why. And so this is what I'll be focusing on now, to say, okay, but given all the bad news, and there's a lot of bad news that I've provided, how can this situation be turned around based on international best practice? And this is towards the new paradigm. So the question here is that those international economists, what do they focus on? Also, the problems as we've got in South Africa, low levels of job creation. There is job creation happening, but it's suboptimal. And the problem is that when you look at the quarterly labor force survey, a lot of those jobs being created is in the informal sector of the economy. It's not really jobs, it's survivalists. Then also, the weak ability of the labor market to absorb the unemployed in employment. What's fascinating of South Africa is that when you look at the Gini coefficient, a few years ago, we were the most unequal country of the world at about 0.64, which means that it's very unequally distributed. We're currently at about 0.7, which is even worse than that, etc. And that's also because of the weak ability. Then also low real compensation growth, and also here that many jobs that could traditionally be filled by the non-tertiary qualified or qualified by tertiary people. So these are a lot of burning issues in South Africa. So the new heroes that I want to introduce to you, the people that went out into the world to go and look, but what have countries done that have succeeded in changing the situation around? It's firstly a person by the name of Jeffrey Sachs. Now he was a professor of economics at Columbia University, and he was also one of the originators of what is currently called the Sustainable Development Goals that he developed in collaboration with the United Nations. Our friend Jeffrey Sachs has got his own friend. And this friend is also an economist, but he's also a well-known singer. I don't even know Bono from YouTube. So Jeffrey Sachs and Bono toured the world. They eventually wrote a book called The End of Poverty. And in that, they had a look at what are some countries doing wrong to address the situation, and what are some countries doing right to address the situation. Then there was also two other economists, Professor Daflo and Professor Abraham G, that also got eventually the Nobel for Economics. And they also were doing very much the same, looking, for example, why some countries are succeeding to address that and why some countries are failing. And what they found is as follows. Firstly, with respect to job creation, countries with the same focus that we've got at the moment, namely to generate, as also indicated in the National Development Plan, of high levels of economic growth giving rise to high levels of job creation, which are indicated that their justice is very weak. What did they do? They focused on labour market flexibility to encourage employers to choose labour above capital. I remember, just before you start to crucify me, I remember when I was still part of the old National Manpower Commission, eventually NEDLAC, where a lot of debates. And a lot of people say, you can't have labour flexibility, you must have labour protection. What was emphasized from the international research, you must have labour protection. That's non-negotiable. Okay? But the question is that how far do you protect labour, etc. Okay? So that would then mean that something like the Labour Relations Act, non-negotiable. You must have it. You must have mechanisms to ensure that there's a fair negotiations, that it is structured, etc. The basic conditions of Employment Act, absolutely necessary. There's no question about it that you need, for example, that's the basic protection should be in place. The big question is that if you've got a lot of other practices, like for example, it could possibly be like the labour courts, where you work according to the principle of substantive and procedural fairness that differs from case to case, which doesn't provide certainty. That discourages a lot of employers. Also, if there's a very large labour market regime, etc. And what they've seen here, for example, is that if you've got sufficient labour market flexibility, that encourage more employers to employ. So that push up the marginal utility of labour. Also here is that when you want to improve labour market absorption, one of the focus areas here could, for example, be to say, okay, we want to focus on job creation. We must improve job creation. That's the national imperative. The problem with that is we create a pater familia. And a pater familia basically means a father and his family. And in this one, we then say, we as government take responsibility to create jobs for you, and we will create a regime to do that. The problem is, it's not being done from the ground up. And what they found, for example, there is that human capital formation is incredibly important to do that. A lot of those countries, what they did very controversially, is to say, okay, we're going to ensure that education becomes free from pre-primary level all the way through to university level. But there's always that but, okay? That but is to firstly to ensure that that there's a funneling system in place, like you've got in Germany, where you've got an academic track, you've got a vocational track, and you've got a technical track. And to ensure that those skills being inculcated there are skills that's really being cleared by the labour market, and that is also entrepreneurial skills. And a lot of those countries have succeeded very well in doing that. A fascinating experiment that was done by Abraham G. and Dafra is to go and have a look at people in various areas that have been skilled in different ways. And some of them have received the traditional schooling where you sit in a classroom, a lot of facts are being provided to you, you write an exam, you pass the exam or you fail the exam, versus other schools where the children were able to learn by themselves, to do that by more creative ways in discussing things, etc. And they found that cognitive development is the big driver of that human capital formation. So it's not that you have to absorb facts, it's that you have to become a better thinker. And that's a very strong driver. Also in the new paradigm, to address poverty and inequality, we often focus on a very strong social safety net with grants, etc. Our social grants, in economic terms, have become non-sustainable over the long term. However, because of the fact that you've got these huge levels of unemployment and poverty and inequality, if you take it away, just take it away, you'll have a revolution. In the sense, for example, that will put a lot of people that's already deep in poverty in a worse situation. So what you need to do then is to wean people slowly off the social security system by enabling them to take responsibility for their own future. Also, to ensure social equity, the current policy focus on labour law enforcement and also a very strong focus on redistribution. What our friends, the economists, Abraham G., Dafro, Bono, and Sachs found, that it's very interesting that there's a completely different way to do this. And that is to ensure that people can stand up for themselves. For the past about 12 years, we've been doing a project together with Momentum that's called the Financial Wellness Survey. And in those surveys, we basically track people in South Africa, how vulnerable they are financially, etc. One of the questions that we ask in that survey that always floors me is that we ask them, do you believe that you are in control of your own life? On a 10 point scale, 0, I'm not in control of my own life, and 10, I'm in control of my own life. The bulk of the people in South Africa are sitting between 0 and 5. They feel that they've got no control over their own lives, no control over their own futures, etc. And so now you ask them, but how do they get things right? They get things right, for example, by more aggressive ways, etc. Well, what the international research has shown that one of the first things that you need to do is to get people to become personally empowered to do things for themselves, etc., instead of being dependent. Then also there is that looking at your active labour market policies, you find, for example, that there's a lot of active labour market policies in South Africa, but these active labour market policies are not really achieving what they're supposed to achieve. Dion and myself at one stage had some policy workshops that we've done together with the World Bank. And during those World Bank workshops, we had a lot of discussions about what is being achieved via your active labour market policy. And at that stage, it was supported financially, the workshop, by the Korean government. So they also had some of the representatives there. And as we went on with this, the Koreans became increasingly confused. They said that what they're hearing doesn't make sense, etc. And we had a chat with the Koreans asking, and they said, well, we've been talking this morning that we've got employment equity targets. Okay, you all know employment equity targets. And you've got a target that by the end of the year, I want to achieve, for example, that 50% of my workforce should be female. Okay? Come the end of the year, did these companies in South Africa achieve those targets? The Koreans said in Korea it doesn't work that way. If you put it on paper that you'll achieve 50%, okay? Top management commit that they'll do it. If they don't do it, what happens? They go to jail. It's as simple as that. So if you've got, and their point is that if you've got employment equity targets, if you've got, for example, targets with respect to employment, they also indicated that they have to submit yearly employment targets. And if they don't achieve that, etc. So what the Koreans also said is that what we've got at the moment is that there's a lot of the active labour market policies that, for example, discourages a lot of employers to employ. But those policies also don't have the desired effect of what they want to achieve, etc. And so what they then indicated is that you need to ensure that these policies are designed in such a way that they are policed effectively. Have less of them, but ensure that those that you've got are effectively policed. And then also, this is that just to bring everything together, it's then very important to ensure that we fully implement this new policy paradigm. And so, because it's focused on firstly strengthening the human and social capital, you'll notice that I'm not referring anymore now to ensuring that there's high economic growth, which could lead to more job creation, etc. So the focus then becomes on human and social capital. Also here is that you'll notice that this is in contrast to the current labour market policies and a lot of the imperatives that there is. Secondly, in the new paradigm that has been implemented with great success in developing countries, you will also notice that the focus is firstly on absorbing the unemployed, reducing poverty, and distributing income. The first thing that these countries have done is to ensure that they measure poverty, inequality, and unemployment correct. Because of what they've indicated there, that if you don't measure that correct, then, for example, it becomes impossible to achieve something. So, Bono, in one of the TED talks that I really encourage you to have a look at, he focused on these countries and asked, but what has happened in these countries during the period 2010 to 2019 with respect to poverty? What happened is poverty was more than halved in those countries. While, for example, countries that stayed in this way of high economic growth leading to employment were not in the same situation. Also here, finally, is that the whole thing of personal empowerment, skills development, thinking skills, entrepreneurial skills, etc., incredibly important. So, does that mean that government doesn't have a role? No, that means the role of government has to change from an enforcer to become an enabler. Just an example of that, Singapore have created the so-called Singapore Development Board, and in Ireland that you also know that they've got something very, very similar. And what the board basically is that it becomes a facilitator of the labour market instead of, for example, running the labour market. And in that case, what was very interesting in Singapore, have his focus was firstly on the unemployed. So all people that became unemployed was taken into the development board. They were paid while they were re-educated, etc. So they would, for example, ask you, what do you want to do? And if, for example, what you wanted to do with your life links up with the imperative, that was okay. Otherwise, you were basically funneled into a new direction. And when you look at the statistics of the Singapore Development Board, you will notice that the bulk of the people were not educated to become employed, but rather to become self-employed in the process. And finally here is that government must fulfill its responsibility towards its assistance as an enabler. Citizens must acquire high levels of human social capital, and the labour market must evolve to be more flexible. So this is a natural process that takes time. But thank you so much, Joab. Thank you so much, Uasa, for the opportunity to take you through what we believe is a fairly new radical paradigm, although it's working internationally quite well. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Carl. Ladies and gentlemen, you've now seen and heard the report. Are there any questions? Firstly, apology. All of the people that have joined virtually couldn't hear a single word that we've spoken. Technology didn't assist us here. They could see us, and they would have been able to see the presentation as well, but we will, in the chat group, take their questions and then handle them afterwards. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions from the team that are sitting here? Brian, I see your name. I see your name. Brian?
All these slides that the professor presented, it's quite interesting. And it is through empowerment. I just wanted to know if these slides are available to be viewed. Will it be on the website, a link, or how you're going to get hold of it?
That's an easy question. An easy answer. Yes, they will be, and they're already on the website already. The presentation would be on later on, but the report is already on. Could I ask, if you ask a question, if you could just introduce yourself? That was one of our NEC members from Cape Town. Hi. Sir?
Hi, so from Engineering News. This could probably take up another whole hour of discussion, but how is Uasa going to apply the new, or maybe encourage your members to apply the new paradigm? What is your view on that?
So if there are any other questions at this stage? Yes, sir.
It's Stella from the MABC. Mine is the issue of the IR. I'm for IR. I mean, in the employability of different people in different categories of their level of education. What is the impact of the 4R on that?
Let's just quickly stick with those two questions. Prof. Carl, would you like to take some of the answers? I've got one in terms of the Uasa view, in terms of how we're going to tackle this, but just in terms of the employability of people, you from the MIBC, sir?
That's correct.
The employability and how we're going to change that paradigm. Because I think the one slide showed us that we're employing people with higher skills in jobs that should ideally not have been occupied by those higher skilled individuals. Prof. Carl?
Thank you so very much. What you've asked with respect to the various educational levels and 4IR, in the work that was done by the Development Policy Research Unit at the University of Cape Town, and they work together with the University of Stellenbosch on that. They've got a dedicated program that actually focuses on exactly this type of relationship. And what came out from that is that a lot of employers have listed a lot of digital, internet, ICT communication skills, etc., coding skills that are required in the new labour market. First thing, those skills are not in the school curriculums. They actually have a check. So these are basic skills that people are expected. Then also, then they also look at various applications or various programs that's being required. Typically, when you go from school and you want to go and work in a place, they expect you to work with Microsoft Word, with Excel, with PowerPoint, basic stuff like that, etc. And in what they've also found there is that the school leavers are not able to work with those basic programs on a satisfactory level, etc. The one place that they found that a lot of school leavers were actually very good at is in social media, also working with basic applications that they've got on their phone, etc. Really, really good with respect to that. So in some parts well developed, in some parts not developed at all. As a whole, those skills are not being trained at school. Questions were asked by the DPRU to the school system or the education department as to why these skills are not being inculcated. And the reason for that was twofold. Number one, that was indicated that there's already not sufficient space for a lot of these programs within the school curriculum. And also secondly, they believe that the current teachers are not able to basically teach those type of skills. But we've had this, not just, we're very involved as well with the Treasury with respect to entrepreneurial and financial skills, and the same answers were provided there.
Thank you, Prof. Carl. I'm going to try and attempt to answer your question. So, Uasa as a forward-thinking organization that's been around 129 years, you can quickly fall into a trap where what we've done yesterday, and there's an old saying in Fanagalo, Fanagaizo. So the important thing is that at our Congress decided the future we want. And part of the future we want is that we got to a point where we cannot just accept that unemployment goes up. And our NEC, during the deliberations last year, decided we need to do something different. But it's one thing to say you want to do something different and just put it out there. But it's another thing to say we want to do something different because we want a different outcome. And this is what we're busy doing. We've crafted today, with the help of the BMR team, we've now we've laid a foundation where we say, when we start changing our thought patterns and the way we act and react to certain things, and when we start demanding things from our government, amongst others, and from ourselves, there's a big opportunity for us to have a different outcome. But unless you get to that point, and our president in our opening remarks earlier this morning said, unless you change, you should be happy with what you've got. You can't demand something different. You can't demand something better. But this organization has decided we want to do certain things differently for a different outcome. The success hereof is our ability to start spreading this vocab in terms of this new paradigm. And amongst some of the people that are attending here today, right behind you, is our federation producer, represented by the media officer, because we're going to be leveraging this on our federation as well. Because it's not just Uasa, and it becomes a long speech now. It's not just Uasa that is concerned about this, but we want to spearhead this to say, enough about old thinking. We need new thinking, because we need a new outcome. We need a new future. And I hope that helped in terms of some of the questions you asked. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any other further questions? Or have you also been sometimes dumbstruck by some of the figures? Where are we? And where are we going to? We can be part of that solution. And this is not a political speech. We can be part of the solution going forward in this country. Are there any other further questions, sir?
Okay. Thank you. My name is Elijah from Industrial Local Union. Thank you very much, Prof, for the presentation. It's quite powerful. It lays everything out and so on. My question is on the issue of the high skills, high-skilled workers being employed to, like people with degrees and so on, being employed at, to do basic work and so on. And also you presented that they also have a higher chance of getting a job or getting employed and so on. So my question is on the salaries now. The salaries of those professionals who are employed with high skills, high degrees and so on, but doing basic work, as compared to those who are doing work which compares to their skills and so on. What are the correlations there?
Professor Carl, before I hand to you, and yet again, this is something that Uasa does differently to many of our other peers. So not only are we affiliated to FEDUSA, but we're also affiliated to the industry hall globally. Why? We need that global reach and that global understanding of these challenges. Professor Carl?
Thank you so very much. It's just that what we've seen here is just that quite a lot of the jobs that's being fulfilled by a lot of the graduates that I've indicated that are not typical tertiary level jobs. And remember, a lot of those jobs basically include basic sales, elementary work, those are fairly low paid occupations. And the people in those jobs won't suddenly be getting a higher compensation because of the fact that they've got higher level skills. In fact, from what I've seen is that a lot of them see those as temporary jobs. That, for example, that they are willing to take because of the fact that they were not able to get a good job immediately. But there's another very weird side to this as well. There were so-called graduateness studies that have been done in South Africa, and they looked at the employment or the absorption rates of different universities. And they found is that there's a lot of universities where the absorption rate, there's some universities where the absorption rate is near 100%. One of them is in Cape Town, one of them is in Johannesburg, no names mentioned, and one of them is in Pretoria. Okay? They're very near 100%. Then there's also some universities where, and these graduates are absorbed into tertiary jobs. And the employers also indicated that they've got the skills to do tertiary level jobs, etc. Then there's also a lot of universities that's in that middle layer, where the absorption rate is somewhere between about 70 and about 85%. There you've already find some of the people that don't clear the market. But then you've also got a few universities and a few large ones where the bulk of these people come in. And there the argument from the employers is that the skills that these people have got don't clear the market. They remain unemployed because it doesn't clear the market. They stay then in these type of lower level jobs with the idea of being temporary. But a lot of them actually remain in that for a very long time. Just to, sorry, Jacques, on the other question that you've had on how does Uasa also look, for example, possibly, I can't speak to you, but possibly on implementing this. Just remember, this is that when you look at your members, a lot of your members have been sitting in positions for a very long time at plus minus the same level as administrative or clerical, etc. When you look at also the work that especially Jeffrey Sachs have done, he focused on a lot of these countries where people were, because of free education up to a tertiary level, were allowed to, although they were working as clerks or PAs, etc., to go to universities, night school, whatever, etc. And then, for example, with because of the fact that they've got access to that higher education, then obtain those skills and then also improve their incomes over time because of simply being better qualified, etc. in Germany, which is a very well-known example, quite a lot of German companies there, instead of giving people very high pay hikes, they say, but let's play this off against the opportunity to go and study to improve those skills, etc. And they found, for example, by people obtaining those better skills, that their incomes over time increased dramatically faster than it would have been in the absence of that.
Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any other further comments, questions? I think it's then my opportunity just to make a few final comments. Brethren, would you like to make a few comments? You happy? So what is this about today? It's about being uncomfortable where we currently are in this country. So you would remember in the summer speech of our state president in February, he talked about the resilience of the South African people. I am, as a person, very concerned that that resilience is slowly but surely reduced to nothing over time because of the magnitude of challenges that we have. So is Uasa, by creating this new paradigm, by creating this new index, do we say we're going to solve everything? No. What are we going to attempt to do is we want to solve the things that are in our sphere of influence, where we can make a difference. So whether it be at FEDUSA, whether it be in NETLAC, whether it be in the MEIBC, we need to become part of that catalytic role. We need to play that catalytic role to start affecting this change. And this organization is passionate about being part of the future. We've got a proud history of 129 years, and we want to build on another 129 years as an organization. So by laying this foundation, I'm absolutely certain that we're moving from a point where we're saying, based on the research that the BMR team have done, this is where we currently are. This is what we deal with. But how are we going to change those paradigms going forward? Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to make a comment. One of the things, Prof. Karel, that I took away, that I actually made notes of, was that thinking skills, entrepreneurial skills, and market-related skills are not things that you find out there. You get people that by their mere nature, they are able to teach themselves those skills. And I think that talks to the resilience. But we need to move beyond that to come to a more sustainable one. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to thank the the BMR team, stumbling over my words, especially Prof. Dion Tunston, that flew in from Europe this morning on his way back home, and he said, I'm going to drop in here. Greatly appreciated, Prof. Jacqueline, thank you so much. Prof. Karel. Uasa is looking forward to a relationship that we would be able to look back at and say, this is what we got. We left the place in a better state, and that's our wish. So Uasa is extremely proud about this relationship, and we're looking forward to many years of collaborating and changing those paradigms to ensure that we create a better world for workers out there, our members. So, ladies and gentlemen, to our NEC, proudly led by our president, thank you so much. Thank you for seeing the vision and being part of this change. To all of the guests that have joined us, thank you so much for making the time to come out to the East Rand, to come and join us for this new paradigm. And may I wish everybody a safe ride home. Those of you that are flying, that's one thing we need to change. It's just safe air nowadays. So our economy do have a few challenges and a few opportunities as well. But to the BMR team, thank you so much. Our NEC, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our privilege now to invite you to a lunch just outside. They say the trade unionists can never go to a meeting without eating. So that's true. So ladies and gentlemen, kindly join us on behalf of our NEC. You're all invited to join us for lunch. And to the team at the back that done most of the work, your colleagues for all. There we go. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Take care.
Baie dankie. Dankie vir julle.